One of the biggest struggles that I have as a backpacker is that I have a really hard time staying warm when I'm at camp, which means that winter backpacking has been something that is a huge struggle for me over my many years of being a backpacker. In this video, I wanted to show you a few simple things that you can add to your core 3-season backpacking kit to make it more comfortable for winter backpacking. This is my show, gosh darn. Quick caveat, I am not like a mountaineer, super cold weather winter backpacker, so I'm not gonna touch on any of the extreme temperature stuff. So the first tip that I want to start with is one that is like so obvious that it's surprising, and that is that being dehydrated can make you cold. You probably know that when it is really hot outside, it's important to drink a lot of water to help basically keep your body cool. But on the other end of the spectrum, if it's really cold outside, you also need to be hydrated to help keep your body warm. This is my reservoir wrapped in this very space-agey looking reservoir insulator. I feel like for the most part, people would agree that drinking water from a reservoir makes it a lot easier to stay hydrated than drinking from like a water bottle, mostly because you just have like a water delivery tube inches from your face at all times. The problem with reservoirs in the winter is that if the temperatures get really cold, the water can freeze in your reservoir, and that's why I think having some kind of insulating reservoir sleeve can be really helpful for staying hydrated when you're camping in the winter. So in here's my reservoir. Boom. I'm mixing brands. This is a Gregory reservoir and an Osprey sleeve. Scandal! And that is in this like neoprene shiny sleeve that helps keep the water from freezing. But the bigger problem actually is not that the water in here will freeze, it's that the water in this skinny little tube and the mouthpiece will freeze. This is really handy, but you don't have to buy like a fancy reservoir insulating sleeve. I've seen people wrap the tube of their reservoir in Reflectix, which is this like material that's often used in vans. But another really great way to keep the water that's in the tube of your reservoir from freezing is actually to blow the water back into the belly of the reservoir once you're done drinking. What I would do is basically bite down on the valve of this and then blow air into the tube until I heard bubbles. So now I know all my water is in here, along with some air and probably some weird stinky breath, and there's no water in the tube of my reservoir, which means there's nothing in here to freeze. Cool. I now use my insulated reservoir when it's really cold outside, but if you don't want to use something like this, you can absolutely use a water bottle. I would just recommend using a Nalgene. One hack is to store it upside down in your pack. Your water will freeze from the top down. So by storing it upside down, you're going to be able to still drink the water that's down here when you open this up. Whereas if you store it this way, you'll have frozen water on top and you won't be able to get to the not frozen water in the bottom. I said that if you were dehydrated, that is going to keep you from being like properly warm. Don't just drink water, add in something like electrolytes, and then also remember how important it is to like eat food. Think of your body as a fire. You have to feed the fire in order to keep it burning, and that like internal burning is what helps keep you warm. Internal burning? That sounds evil.
Yeah, you popped out of your metaphor there. Keep it going.
Throw logs on a fire. Just throw that chili mac on that fire. Keep that internal tummy fire going. Listen, ultimately, you're generating heat, okay? If you're like moving a lot, if you're like going like this, you're like generating heat from within. But like another way to do that is by like having enough caloric intake that your body can like exert the energy needed to stay warm. I don't know how to say this in a metaphor. I'm just gonna say it the sciencey way. Food equals calories. Calorie equal energy. Energy keeps your body warm.
I think we got it.
Fire, logs, fire burns, happy people.
Fire does not burn happy.
You might notice, if you've like ever looked at backpacking meals, a lot of them will say things like 2 servings on them. Serving size, half a package, and 1 serving is 340 calories. This is not 2 servings. This is a 1 serving meal, especially when it's cold outside. Eat calories. Calories are good. On the topic of food, one thing to note is that if you're using a canister stove, essentially a stove that screws onto one of these isobutane propane fuel canisters, it is going to take longer to boil water in cold temperatures. Just keep in mind that you either need like extra time and in a lot of cases extra fuel in order to boil enough water to rehydrate your food. Plan ahead, pack enough fuel. Drinking enough water, having enough electrolytes, and eating enough food is a really important part of creating heat. Now let's talk about how to keep that heat that you've generated. And the first thing I want to actually talk about is how to keep your hands and your toes warm. I have Raynaud's, which is essentially this condition that causes my hands and my toes to go numb, even when it's not like super cold outside. And someone recommended me a long time ago that I should always be using mittens instead of gloves. Mittens keep your fingers close to each other, and that helps them stay warm, whereas gloves keep everything separate. Do not separate your digits. They need to be bonded and warm together. Let them help each other. Except for your thumb. Your thumb. Thumb is just by itself. This is maybe not really a tip so much as it is like a reminder. To the best of your ability, never take them off and never put them on the ground. This can be really challenging to like do things that require high dexterity when you're wearing mittens. But I have found that the best thing for me to do is to just focus on doing stuff really slowly. So I have to like buckle my hip belt. I would just like really slowly loosen it and buckle it versus just like pulling my gloves off, chucking them on the frozen ground, buckling my hip belt, and then like moving on.
Will you send a text using your mitten?
Hey Siri.
How dare you?
Sorry about that.
Oh, my phone just... Nothing. Oh, I called Siri a bitch and she's upset. Cool. The reason you don't want to put your mittens on the ground is because the ground is cold, and if you put something that's supposed to keep you warm on the cold ground, then it will get cold, and then you will get cold. Keep it off the ground. I drew on them. It's a gay raccoon and a gay skunk, and they love each other. Okie dokie. So, that is mittens. So even after I figured out how to keep my hands warm when I was backpacking, I used to really struggle with keeping my toes warm. I've tried all sorts of things. I have insulated hiking boots. I got these like special insulated insoles, really heavy wool socks. And ultimately, the thing that's actually worked best for me are these really inexpensive neoprene toe sleeves that I got from Amazon. These are made out of neoprene, which is basically the same thing that like scuba suits are made out of, but they are really insulating and they provide an awesome additional layer over your toes. So you're essentially like putting your socked foot into one of these things. I wear these in my shoes like all winter. I have many pairs of them, really effective. Hot sake.
I like hot sake.
Hot sake, keep your toes happy. Tracksfactory.com. Hand wash warm. Oh, I definitely don't hand wash these. I for sure just throw them in the washing machine. And they're in great condition still. If you want to even like increase the effectivity of these, you can use toe warmers in between your socks and these toe covers. These things are really great, but they're temporary. But if you need to add some additional warmth, stick these onto your socks and then put these over top of them, and these will help to insulate the warmth that's created by these to keep your toes warm. If there's one thing you take away from this video, it is that these tiny red things are the best. I love them. Cool. So in addition to keeping your hands and your toes warm, it's also really important to think about insulating your core. Even if you have a really good down jacket or insulated jacket, you might still feel like you need some extra warmth. And that's when I think an insulated vest comes in handy. So this is a really simple synthetic insulated vest. All this is going to do is provide an additional layer of warmth and insulation in your core, and keeping your core warm is going to help to keep your extremities warm. That's why like if your fingers get cold, you should like do shoulder shrugs. Keep your core warm. Your core is where all your important stuff is. You got like your heart, you got your stomach, you got your spleen, your liver, baby intestines, very important. The
Baby
pancreas.
intestine.
Small intestine. Additional layer of insulation in your core helps to keep your vital organs warm without adding additional bulk in your arms. So last is probably the most important and the biggest complaint that I hear from backpackers, and that is that regardless of what you are doing during the day, you don't sleep warm at camp. The main reason for this is that your sleep system, your sleeping bag and your sleeping pad, probably aren't warm enough. Now, I'm not saying that you have to get an all-new sleeping bag or an all-new sleeping pad for the winter backpacking season. There are actually two really simple things that you can do to make your 3-season kit work really well for colder months. Use a closed cell foam sleeping pad and a sleeping bag liner. This is a closed cell foam sleeping pad. Now, we say closed cell foam, all I mean is that there's no air in this. Like there's like self-inflating foam sleeping pads. This is just a piece of foam. However you strike it, it's just foam. So on their own, closed cell foam sleeping pads don't have a very high R value or insulation value, but when you use this in conjunction with an air pad, you actually just get to stack the R values. So this thing Opens up like this. You're gonna put this down like so, put your air pad on top of this, and then put your sleeping bag on top of that. And this is adding additional R value or insulation value to your whole sleep system. They're also really awesome to use anytime you are stopped. So if you're like taking a break for lunch, sit on this. If you were like standing around, stand on this. Use this as a layer of insulation between your body and the cold ground. Even not in the wintertime, I will carry some form of closed cell something or other. This is my sit pad. These are just really awesome to help protect your butt from cold ground. But in the wintertime, I'll just use this. If you've ever like been at a sports game and you're like sitting in a cold stadium seat and you're like, my butt's cold. And then there's someone next to you who's like a crazy creek chair and they're like, my butt's not cold. That's like essentially what's happening is they're adding an additional layer between their butt and the cold. That's all that this is. The second thing is a sleeping bag liner. Sleeping bag liners are basically just like little sheets that go inside your sleeping bag to make them slightly warmer. There are like all sorts of companies that say that sleeping bag liners can provide additional degrees of warmth into your sleeping bag. There is no study that says that that's true, but they definitely do make you warmer by just providing an additional layer of warmth between your body and the like cold nylon of your sleeping bag. Ta-da! So it's essentially just like a big sleeve. You slide your body down into it. This is the hood, the big old body sock. If you have a 30-degree sleeping bag and you are camping in a place where it's like 0 degrees, this is not gonna do it. You will likely need a warmer sleeping bag, but if you have a sleeping bag that's like close to the right temperature and it's like close to being warm enough and you just feel like you're still getting cold at camp, this is gonna make a really big difference in comfort and in just like helping you sleep. Plus they're cozy and they also make it easier to clean your sleeping bag because you just get your body sweat in here. Great! Now, obviously the topic of staying warm is not just about comfort, it's also about safety. But the tips that I recommended in this video are really about keeping you comfortable when it starts to get really cold outside. And there are tons of other tips out there. So if I missed your favorite, I would love to hear it in the comments below. And if you try any of this stuff and it works for you, obviously I also want to hear about that. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all outside. Bye! Stay warm, buds. These should not go on the ground.
Stay off the iceberg.
Stay off the iceberg. Exactly.
Yeah, I needed to hear that. Captain the Titanic. Sorry. Look, it's not too soon, okay? It's been over 100 years.
It's too soon.